What happens when products you build don't just live behind a screen, but power real world moments between businesses and their customers? Today's guest knows exactly what it's like to design for that high stakes moment where software, hardware, payments, and human behavior all collide. I'm Mark Garcia, and you're listening to the Product Builders Podcast. Today, we're joined by Jacqueline Sigler, Senior Product Manager at GoDaddy. Jacqueline led the charge in building GoDaddy's point of sale systems from the ground up, designing not just for the merchants running the businesses, but for the customers standing across the counter. Jacqueline, welcome to the show. Before we begin, I would love for you to introduce yourself. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and what first pulled you into the world of product management?
Thanks, Mark. Super appreciative and glad to be here and to get to speak with you and your listeners today. As for myself, I'm originally from the East Coast. I spent my first 9 years working in the financial service industry. As probably you know, and many of the product managers know, that product managers, designers come in all different shapes and sizes and backgrounds. And so I used to work in corporate strategy and mergers and acquisitions, did that between New York City and London, and then decided to take a break from the world of finance and enter the world of tech, startup, and entrepreneurship. And I moved to Austin and got my graduate degree at UT, and then did a bunch of different startups, internships at different startups around Austin, which was great. And this is how I navigated my path into product, which I've been doing for the last over 7 years.
So you've had, and you've mentioned this, you've had such a wide ranging background as well. Myself, I've kind of come from a different variety of design and finally went into product. But what eventually led you into product management specifically?
Well, what I was seeking before in my previous role, working in strategy and mergers and acquisitions and partnerships, what I was doing was really facilitating decision making, working with business partners, tech partners, working with other product managers into helping decide what the next several years look like, as well as other companies to potentially buy or partner with that would complement our abilities. And I was both ready to move into an actual decision-making role. And then while I had been working in software and analytics, I wanted to understand how tech gets built, the software behind the hood. Not so that intimately that I could become, a coder, but I wanted to understand how software products got built. And so I say between those two desires, then over time and going through my both internships and graduate school experience, that's what's ultimately led me down the path of product management. And at that time, this would have been 2017, 2019. Many of my classmates were talking a lot about product management. And at first I sort of shied away to go against the grain, and then through experience and internships decided that actually that was going to be a role suited well for me. And so turned out it has been. And some of the things I really love about it, one of the things that I got to enjoy and benefit from in my prior role was getting to work with many cross-functional teams, and that no day of mine really looked the same. And so that's something also from the style of work that I was also seeking, something that's remained and definitely very true of a product manager. Many people working in tech day to day, very cross-functional, interdependent structures.
That's great. And it's funny you say that. I do interviews all the time for hiring and stuff. And a common question I get, which is obviously a little sidebar here, but I get interviews and the question is, what does your day to day look like? And I never have a set answer. My answer is always like, you know what, honestly, depends on the time of year, on the project, etc. So I fully empathize with what that looks like and how product can shift so drastically just at any given point in the year.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that said, let's go ahead and shift gears here, get into the heart of your work, designing a point of sales ecosystem that lives in both physical and digital worlds. So I imagine this is a space where things can get maybe chaotic really fast, things move really fast. There's a lot of different moving pieces here. What makes building POS systems uniquely complex from a product and UX perspective versus something that's just purely digital, if you will?
It's interesting because you mentioned the word fast and things moving fast, and Actually point of sale and both point of sale hardware and payments necessitates moving slowly. And so there's a combination where you are the day to day can feel like a brisk pace and many different projects floating around, you're working on at a time, but ultimately there's multiple sides of the equation. So in a point of sale, you have the actual hardware itself, whether one company is building the hardware themselves or working with a OEM or third party to actually manufacture the hardware, and that is a very elongated process of getting the hardware correct and doing different types of prototyping and then going through certification and all of that. That's one layer. Then you have another layer of the actual point of sale applications and experience, which is what most of my domain is. And majority of point of sale devices or most of the key competitor players that are out there, they are built on mobile applications, and many of them are Android applications. So that also means you're going through a operating system update as well. And so it's distinct from web deployment in that you could be iterating deploy, and you deploy and it shows to the, customer within hour or so. Whereas anytime you have applications that is going through, you can do some type of updates on the back end sort of silently, but anytime there's meaningful updates that requires an operating system update. And then there actually is ultimately the primary function is to serve as a payment and checkout vehicle. And so because you're in the world of payments, things that there's very extensive quality assurance testing that we do anytime we have development cycles. As anyone working in technology or any different types of products, you would have your QA cycle to ensure your new capabilities are passing through tests. When you're working through payments, you have to ensure that everything is stable from a payments availability, acceptance, privacy, security, and so forth. So your day to day can be intense and fast moving, but what actually happens on the release side tends to be intentionally and meaningfully slower comparatively.
Interesting, and thank you for the clarification there. And I remember when we first spoke, you shared an anecdote about how you had to work on an update, but you actually didn't see it roll out for a couple months later. So, can you actually share that anecdote with the audience? And I think this really speaks to how both you have to move really fast to solve solutions, but they get slowly implemented in the actual real world.
Yes, we live in a true omni-commerce world now, we as a collective. And so what does that mean? That means that you're operating on online e-commerce channels, marketplaces, mobile app, tap to pay, in-person point of sale payments, and then other different types of payments such as pay links, invoices, and so forth. And so um, we operate in an agile methodology. We do 2 week sprints, but we tend to operate on a quarterly OS release cadence. And because we not only have our GoDaddy customers, we also work with banking partners, we work with resellers, and again with the payments processing being the ultimate criticality. Uh, it operates best for us to not be doing big chunk releases on a regular basis. And so previously, even for my first 2.5 years when I was working at GoDaddy, I worked on a different part of GoDaddy's business, and that's their website builder and digital marketing software and services. And so I was very used to working in 2 week sprints, but also releasing in 2 week sprints. Certainly some efforts and features and capabilities durated longer. But even on a more simple level, if there were new different types of analytics or measurements that we wanted to track for internal purposes, I could run that through my dev team, go through that process, go through a 1 week, 1 sprint cycle, and those metrics are since added. And even then, you can't do simply that in our world. And it either has to go through specific application updates, or those come with OS movements, or you may get garner customer feedback of learner pain points on a frequent basis, but you have to decide what's the threshold for that iterative update. And it does require tight coordination, and there are a lot of interdependencies as well. So it is definitely a new world, I would say. Just speaking candidly, one of it was not only a very big learning curve going from the world of website development, digital marketing software and tools, to then going to commerce, payments, and point of sale. So subject matter wise, they were quite distinct. But also I would say from your like satisfaction and like validation as a product manager, part of it is you gather the customer feedback, you iterate on want with your design team, you go build it with dev, and then you release and you learn. And in some of these cases, you're getting that customer feedback, you're iterating with your design team, you're going through the dev process, and then it's wait. Oh, so while your team and you may have, sort of done that effort and are keen to respond fast to merchant feedback, the reality is you might have to wait 6 more weeks before you can both tell the customer and your customer support team that we can release. So it definitely takes a recalibration in terms of just being comfortable with that type of structure. And in particular, knowing that when you're speaking to merchants and they might give you some direct feedback and say, we're really looking for this, or we want to make this tweak, you can take that feedback, but also have to tell, expectations set with them that, we're working on this, but, you may not see this for another, 6 weeks or so.
There's so much happening behind the scenes from what seems like a very simple checkout interaction, right? For people who don't know product, you go buy your groceries, you tap your card, and that's it. But just hearing you talk about it, obviously there's so much more complexity to it. I want to zoom out a little bit for a moment because you've been at the center of such a complex product space. I'd love to know what it's taught you about product, about team collaboration, designing for trust when you're working with something as sensitive as payments. So, how do you approach UX design to meet such a wide range of technical comfort levels in terms of you have the business owner who needs kind of like that administrative functionality. You've got the end user who all they need to really do is kind of tap and pay. So how do you balance all these different audiences that you have to accommodate for?
Yeah, designing for trust is a great term. I would say one of the unique aspects that I was designing for this type of a capability and checkout and the different types of products that are so tactile, meaning the hardware, but also that both a business owner, a staff, employees, and then the consumer, they also get so used to operating in some mechanism. And so I would say in some ways we are designing in a more conservative manner. And what I mean by that specifically is that distinct to, let's just make it up and say, even a social media app or another different type of mobile app that might be gaming related, for example, in which case you could do, you know, A/B tests every week, make small tweaks here and there. In this case, you're the business owner, small business owner or staff, they get trained and they want things that their number one job is to check out someone quickly and efficiently, and then ensure that the transaction goes complete. So if you start regularly making changes to someone's layout,
Yeah.
you're disrupting effect in some ways the training that the business owner has provided to the staff. They now have to go through new cycles of training, and so that's one aspect when I mentioned more like conservative or trust based approach. Secondly, I think is that we are also taking the mindset of that you have many different types of um, people who are using your products. And so what I mean by that is that you might have a 20-year-old summer intern who's working during the summer job who's using your point of sale. You might have a 65-year-old business owner, and all that runs in between. And so you do have quite a little wide range of archetypes of body types. And so accessibility is also really important,
Mm.
usability and efficiency of the product. And so I would say from the we work super tightly with our UX design partners, and it's all about building that trust relationship. We do a lot of user testing with prototypes, We do speak with merchants. We all do make a point in our day-to-day interactions at small businesses, whether they're a customer of GoDaddy or not, to just be observant of what people behind the counter, if you will, are doing on a point of sale, and then you as a consumer. So I sometimes have to make a point to like shut it off when I'm just going about my weekends and doing a transaction. But that's what's also unique about working in something like point of sale. It's so pervasive and omnipresent in our life. And it's one of the things that really sparked my interest about it. And so the UX design interaction and partner interaction and working with our development teams is super important. We do employ a lot of Android principles in our development. And then I would say because it is a mobile app, we can look to other different types of mobile design best practices, what is going on in terms of just overall enhancements. And then GoDaddy at large has their own design system that we do work with as well. And so we're trying to ensure that across the product, entire GoDaddy ecosystem, that the branding, that the UIs are consistent as much as they can be.
You brought up a lot of great points in there: trust, accessibility. I know from my experience, and I haven't done it quite as much as you have in your point of sales vertical, but I think some of the harder projects I've worked on have been ones where the audience tech savviness is just like a wide range. Like there's no one audience member that you can really focus on. You have both people familiar with tech and then those not familiar, and it's just finding the balance between them is probably still a huge challenge for me in work that I do where that comes up. So thank you for sharing. And you actually also brought up one point that I want to revisit in terms of, you mentioned you do a lot of user testing and QA. I'm curious to know if you can speak about how you validate ideas, features, new rollouts when your end product is tied so much to like a physical environment, and the stores that these point of sales might go into are they're not the same, right? It can vary. So how do you test these end user experiences when there's so many different variables that you can't necessarily control?
Very good question.
Is that a loaded question?
No, it's fine. It's just apropos and just every day. So that's why I smile. So I would say from the testing side, we continue to try and have a regimen of when we're considering new capabilities to run them through user tests, and we have whether it's using usertesting.com or Listener or other similar technologies, we use those, but we also will always have criteria questions to ensure that someone is a regular user of a point of sale. So we're getting someone who has a more intimate, contextual, and maybe I should say vested interest in the subject matter. We also make a point to review a lot of our designs and propose ideas and gather ideas from our customer support team, particularly for the point of sale and commerce. We do have a lot of, particularly for larger size customers, we do have a very regular interaction with our customer and technical
Right.
support team and our merchants. And those are a really sound source of merchant feedback, whether bugs or new feature requests. And so I hold bi-weekly review sessions with our customer support team on the point of sale side as a way to gather customer health, in addition to also previewing different designs and prototypes with them, because they are the ones also intimately working with our merchants day to day. We will also do cross shares internally. And so that's the way that we will do a lot of the validation on the software and application experiences. And then we've also, for as we continue to learn, one of the themes is that merchant and employee preferences in terms of the way that they set up their point of sale looks different across every business owner. And that's where people get particularly, they want their own specific customization. And so for relatedly, we're rolling out some optimizations to that. And we did some merchant interviews directly, part the rationale for why we are making these optimizations based on ongoing customer feedback, where it's them directly telling us or they're reporting bugs of issues. And so you see, it's pattern seeking. And so in which case we had the discussions and reviewed prototypes with the merchants directly to get their to get their feedback and reaction to them and see that it solves a problem that, they're coming in. The hardware side one's, I would say, a distinct process, but not also that dissimilar. We are getting ready to roll out a new point of sale hardware, and went through the whole prototyping hardware, different pieces, and going through those for a more formal hardware testing. But then we also did do a beta with existing customers who already use some of our other point of sale devices. And so we did specific roundtables and check-in surveys and calls with them to ensure that this new hardware, the design, was working as intended for them, also to capture the feedback and gotchas, if you will, and then how the interaction with the software and application side experience worked as well.
Wow. So basically, you've done sort of every methodology of testing from both remote, self-guided to in person. Sounds like a lot, but that's also sounds like a interesting way to work. Um, and I know one of the things that I remember you mentioning to me early on when we were planning this was your interest in working with small business owners specifically.
Mhm.
Curious if you have any lessons that you've learned with product, specifically working with these small business owners. Any just insights or interesting, unique perspectives you've been able to gather from working with this type of audience?
One of the notes that you made was about having humility in your process and just in your day to day. And so specifically, many of the users, merchants of our products, they are not tech savvy. Not only that, most of them started a business because they're passionate about, you know, this idea that they came up with, or this problem that they experienced directly, and they have their own solution to it, or it's a passion project. They came up with new design, graphic design t-shirts, and they want a way to sell it online and in person and in flea markets. And so I mention that because there is some idea burning insight or just excitement about getting out there, getting their product out there. And, you know, point of sale or payment software is not their reason to believe. It's not why they started the business. And so, you know, I I, I take a lot of pride in what we do because we are helping uh, local business owner, small business owner in their operations, while also remaining aware that, it's our job to basically get out of the way as much as we can. It's meant to be a frictionless, um, and, minimizing effort, and also a delightful experience at the same time. It's a balancing of a product and experience that needs to perform a very mission critical function: check in, check out, take payment. But that also continues to adapt to the market. And, I think, it's that's where I mentioned as well the design principles of providing a pleasant UX, but at the same time, we're not trying to add a bunch of different gimmicks and images and gamify the experience, because, like I said, our role is to make something easy to use and to provide a mission critical. And so I try and keep those principles in mind. And, also represent that I sit at a desk, I sit on a laptop, and that's what a lot of my day to day looks like. That's not the same as someone who is picking up a bunch of products, going to a flea market, going to a food truck and selling them, or who works in a brick and mortar. And so one of the things, particularly with the types of products that we operate in a small point of sale, is that sometimes things may look great in a Figma, but once you
Mm.
actually put it on the smaller device and you're standing at a countertop, and therefore you're typing like further away, you realize things aren't so great. And so you do need to have that level set and like the real tangible aspect. And so that's where, the prototyping works well, but then you need to start using it and testing it in your own way regularly to ensure that the idea and matches the viability of it.
It's funny you're talking about seeing it in the real world, and I remember when I first got into product and we were still in office, I had this fantastic setup, multiple monitors. I could expand my Figma to just like full screen. And I remember designing, and we would like test them out. And my dev team's just like, Mark, why are your designs like humongous? Like they don't
Well,
scale down. You can't use them at mobile. And I was like, "Oh, they look great on my laptop," and I real or on my desktop, and I very quickly realized I was like, "Oh yeah, I guess designers have these great setups, but like I was not thinking about these other environments that they go into." So that's very true, and I also love your statement on the idea of humility and how the point of sale system isn't why these people got into their businesses. And so while this is your day to day, it's not their day to day. And so like we talk about empathy and product design and understanding. So I really love that point. It kind of brings a new perspective on like empathizing with the importance of your product in their day and what's really important for whom.
Yep, absolutely.
And so you've made a big shift, I know, going from web now to this point of sales and this whole ecosystem. Now you've been in product management for a few years. If you could give yourself some advice to Jacqueline before she started this transition, what advice would you give yourself if you could go back in time?
I think learning the quote product sense or design sense, which is a nebulous term, but to make it concrete. And sometimes when I've been interviewed or I've led interviews or had other, types of casual conversations, questions have been posed. What apps do you like? What user experiences do you like and why? And so thinking about those questions, what do you like about a navigation, information hierarchy? Um, I think those are the types of almost like day to day minor little decisions that build up into a great user experience or you know, conversely, a negative experience. And so I've made a concerted effort when I'm going through, let's say, even a new onboarding a new onboarding for a new mobile app that I'm downloading just for my own personal use. I try to build that like consciousness, awareness of going through each step. What do I like about it? Is this too many steps? Is it just the right amount of steps? And why is that? And so, we as consumers, irrespective of what you do, we are inundated by technology, in every part of our daily existence. And also we are still have many different types of analog experiences. And so finding those delight experiences, figuring out, if layouts on a website or a mobile app are intuitive, why is that? And so just having that uh like conscious and subconscious as you go through your day-to-day professionally, personally, I think will help build that added sense and then just make you a more, whether you're a designer, developer, product manager, whatever the spectrum is, you're a user researcher, it will just help you have more cognizance in your approaches. It also sometimes can be a little bit annoying for my own self when I'm going through an application or doing a website when something has so much friction in the process because I have this added cognizance. My level of frustration could be abnormally high, but largely that's the guidance that I would give for just myself or anyone who's interested in the subject matter.
Yeah, that's great. For better or for worse, I'm the same. I'll be with friends or I'll be out in the wild and I'll see something, whether it's like a kiosk or I see someone on an app or a website. And in my head, I'm analyzing. I'm like, oh, cool. Like, what was that flow?
Mhm.
Uh, how do I feel about this design? Or I'll be checking in somewhere. I'm like, this is so frustrating. Here's how I would design it. And so,
Yes.
definitely, I'd say I take that with a grain of salt for myself because sometimes I get maybe a little too into it, but definitely great to know for other designers and people in product. I want to touch on this lightly because I know we are coming on time, but obviously the conversation of like emerging technologies, AI, all of those big buzzwords out there. Are there any trends or technologies that you're especially excited about or maybe wary of as it pertains to like the point of sales ecosystem space?
I'll answer in a twofold way. I will say, I'm still in the early stage processes of implementing AI in my day to day professionally or even personally, but particularly professionally. And I'm quite excited about the opportunities. Honestly, I think one of the must do's of being a product manager is writing requirements. And that's also one
Mm,
of the parts that many of us are like, have to find the time, the spirit, and the heart to go through and write a long requirement. And so, where you can use AI tactfully and artfully to help make your role responsibility more streamlined and you just more efficient and effective, I think is wonderful. And so even meeting note taking, AI notes, I think has alleviated a lot of responsibility. As a product manager, I organize a lot of different meetings, cross functional meetings, customer meetings, you know, what have you. And so knowing that I have the AI record and transcribe and that the job of being a dutiful note taker has since been alleviated, I think helps actually focus back on the subject matter of the meeting. And so I'm excited about that. I think as far as the point of sale world, I haven't yet thought that much about AI in the point of sale specifically. I do see optimizations that we're already looking into as far as how to make building and managing a catalog easier. I see more of the potential, like the trends shifting into the actual hardware itself. And so I foresee that at quick service restaurants, kiosks would probably come more and more into play. I was at a Panera Bread the other weekend and their entire order taking was through kiosks, and that's different. I also notice in retail operations that you have the actual point of sale counters, but also many more
yeah.
people are starting to move to point of sale in a mobile device, whether it's your own device or customer provided. And certainly, I have a Garmin watch, many people have watch, so I think the wearables and how that interacts with payments and wallets, so I guess that's where am, like, both nerding out and just intrigued to see how those aspects, shift our behaviors. I also think, uh I think different rewards and loyalty also influence user behavior, certainly influences mine. And so just that we're the keen area on how that influences commerce, I'll be curious to see how, you businesses who provide different types of loyalty rewards continues to adapt that and also makes it easier for the business owner and also monetarily incentivizing for the business owner to implement.
Made really great points there. It's clear this space, I mean, all spaces right now are going to keep growing and shifting and evolving with all these technologies. So, really great insight from your perspective there. But before we wrap up, I do like to end these talks with a little quick fire question segment. So, just no overthinking here. Answer with the first thing that comes to mind, kind of your gut take in a couple seconds. I'm going to throw maybe like two or three at you. All right. So, quick fire. Here we go. What is one underrated skill every product manager should have?
Not underrated, but the customer interviews is probably your most number one job, speaking to customers.
Interesting. Okay. Let me do another one here. I'm going to go fast. What's one tool you couldn't live without as a product manager?
Right now, I would say we implemented Microsoft Teams, and while we were reluctant to move away from Zoom, now I'm very happy with it. So,
I actually, sidebar, also just got off Zoom and kind of joined the rest of my team on, we use Google Hangouts. And I was reluctant as well, but much simpler when we're all on the same platform there. All right,
definitely.
last one here. What is the most surprisingly fun part of working within this space for you?
Just the ability to speak with small business owners to see the day-to-day interactions in my day-to-day as a consumer. It's so rare that for products that you work on that you get to see people interact and touch them, use them every day. And so, while working in products in point of sale is a difficult job in that you have many customers, interdependencies, payments, QA, all of that. The ability to learn and see day to day people's user interactions, whether it's your point of sale or another, is just so unique. And so I love that about this job.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing those answers and for playing along. That is one of my favorite parts of the show. All right. But before we go, we like to wrap things up with what we call our Majestic Bite. If listeners can take away just one thing from this episode, what would that be from your perspective?
I'm gonna give a more personal one, an anecdote that I've chosen to live by my entire life from very young age is health is wealth. And so investing in your health, which also relevant to work, having boundaries at work, taking time for your physical, mental, emotional well-being pays dividends. And so I'm all about overall healthy lifestyle and whatever that means to you.
That was a great bite. So, Jacqueline, thank you so much for being on the show today and for sharing your journey. Your work really shines a light on how product thinking extends beyond our screens and into the real world, and how different people and businesses get impacted by the things that we create. For those of you tuning in, thanks for always listening. If you want to learn more about Jacqueline's work, we will link out to those in the episode notes. And if you found this episode helpful, give us a follow, leave a review, or share it with someone on your team who is building in complex, high touch spaces like this one. This is the Product Builders Podcast, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks so much, Mark.